practice a ton, develop your style, dive into the world of arts, take an art class, whatever, do that. If you feel like, hey, I've got something here, try and get those opportunities. You will work for free for a while, especially doing, it takes a minute to learn how to scale your art from a notebook to a gigantic wall. Start small.
Hello, beautiful, creative people, and welcome to the Keep Creating podcast presented by Soundstripe, the podcast created by creators for creators. Every episode, we seek out successful creatives who dedicate their lives to pursuing a creative trade or career. We ask them some questions and soak in all the truth their stories seep. Also, we can package it up and provide more creatives like you the inspiration, education, and tools to grow in your own unique pursuit to keep creating. I'm Joel Porter, and I'm excited for the opportunity to host this show and dialogue with our guests about what creativity looks like in their lives. So, without any more delay, thanks so much for listening, and let's get started. If you hear a voice within you saying, "You are not a painter," then by all means paint, boy, and that voice will be silenced. That's a quote Vincent van Gogh wrote to his brother Theo in 1883. When we remember Van Gogh, we see his life as bittersweet. He did not have an easy life, and yet ended up being one of the most prolific artists of all time. Van Gogh struggled with his mental and physical health for most of his life, but he had an incredible passion and work ethic for his art. From 1877 to his death in 1890, Van Gogh created over 2,100 works of art across multiple mediums, seeking out cities and communities and individuals to work with and learn from along the way. But even though Van Gogh was devout to his artistic practice, he did not experience much of any success during his life, only witnessing the sale of one of his paintings. Now, I'm by no means trying to romanticize or advocate for a tortured, masochistic lifestyle for the benefit of creativity. But it's impossible to look at Van Gogh's dedication to his art, his output, and the determination he had to bettering his craft and not believe that he had some of the answers to questions creatives ask today. Thinking about Van Gogh also begs me to ask the question, why do I pursue a creative life? And so I ask you now, why do you? My guest today is skateboarder, entrepreneur, and muralist Nathan Brown. Originally from Los Angeles, Nathan relocated to Nashville when he was 11 years old and endured a major culture shock. Embracing the transition between cities through skateboarding and exploring new territories through traveling as a sponsored amateur, Nathan found artistic motivation. He learned to draw inspiration from his skateboarding travels, from the gradient color palettes in nature, from city life and structural architecture, and took these visual cues and implemented them into his work in the studio and onto the walls of buildings across the US and Europe. Having now produced over 40 large-scale commissioned murals for brands such as Red Bull, Wrangler, Patagonia, Topgolf, WeWork, Google, and Spotify, and more, Nathan is focused on working with brands to bring beautification projects and art programs to the communities that need it most. So without any more delay, let's hear from Nathan. All right, today we're here with Nathan.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Doing really good. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Especially after a recent trip. You were out west doing some work.
Oh, yeah. Love the West. I was out in Moab, in Denver, painting murals, mainly in Moab. I was out there for about a week. And the client kept adding mural projects while I was out there, which was great. But I wish I could have spent some more time hiking around and just exploring. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful time of the year. It's like the weather was mild, obviously no rain, no snow at the time. So it was just a good time to be out there. It was beautiful.
Awesome. So like you just said, you are an artist.
Yes.
And you primarily work with murals.
Yeah.
And mural painting.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that? How does somebody get into, like as an artist, how does that become the focus of your work?
Well, I grew up doing graffiti when I was in high school. It was really big, and especially here in Nashville in the 90s. I had moved from Los Angeles when I was 11, and there was like all these elements that were kind of missing, when I moved here, especially back then. Nashville wasn't like the it city, or
sure.
There wasn't a whole lot going on. So I was like, okay, moved from LA. I miss seeing these things, miss, skateboarding, and tried to just sort of, bring a little bit of home here to sort of like balance out.
So was it illegal or
Oh
an
yeah, it
illegal
was
process?
totally illegal. I was painting trains and
Yeah.
underpasses and whatever. I was pretty respectful with like private property, obviously, but anything public or kind of out of the way, it was a place to practice on.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for many years, and it actually had me travel between that and I was really into skateboarding.
Yeah.
I'd cruise to different cities, once I was able to drive and, go paint and meet skateboarders. And, so like that was kind of the foundation for just my art background.
And so what types of influence were you getting then in that community? So I actually come from like a big snowboarding community
Nice.
and worked at a skate and snowboard shop for like 5 years.
Oh, man.
And so definitely am super, like I love, to this day, I still love a lot of the influence and a lot of the art that comes out of these communities. So specifically, how did that community influence your art? What was the type of style that you were exploring at that time?
I think it was, through skateboarding and through skateboarding travels, it took me to different cities. And usually, every city has, like, as far as graffiti goes, or, street art, well, it was graffiti back then. Each city kind of has its own style.
Yeah.
It's a small community of people out there doing it. And, I was kind of, since I was raised in LA, I had more of like this Los Angeles style. I kind of brought that to the South. There's a few big graffiti artists that are now some of the biggest street artists and gallerists in the world that actually lived here for a while. And I learned a lot from them. One was named Revoke, and he's a huge artist now. He's, world renowned. He actually taught me how to write my letters, with graffiti. But besides that, I think it was just the traveling around to different cities. I got to see all these different styles, and it's sort of a meld of all of that sort of like, that allowed me to do what I did, I guess.
So you started as a graffiti artist.
Yes.
Not formally trained
No,
or anything.
no.
So what was the progression there?
It was, so graffiti was there, skateboarding was there. I kind of fell more into skateboarding. I ended up being like a fully sponsored skateboarder for a long time and made a living off of it for a while. I was traveling. I had like a ton of sponsors that would, have me go do demos all over the country, and I would link up with filmers. And through those travels, I always had graffiti, I would always, admire it everywhere I went, and I would meet artists, and skateboarding kind of took over for a while. So there's like a good 10-year period where it was like skateboarding only, I was doodling and things like that. But this graffiti thing and art and, alternative arts and street art was always back there. And it wasn't until I was like in my mid-20s or so that I really kind of rediscovered that. And I was like, well, there was artists that were kind of getting out of graffiti and kind of progressing into more of mural and street art. And, there's people like Shepard Fairey, doing the Obey posters and wheat pasting. And there's a lot of artists that I started kind of following and looking up to that were doing not just lettering and graffiti, but they were doing like weird shapes and colors and, objects and realism. And that kind of took, I don't know. Yeah, I'd say there was like a 10-year gap between, high school and, mid to late 20s where I started kind of picking art back up. I slowly progressed that and sort of like filtered that into, my skateboarding career. And, soon after my skateboarding career, I'd started a street marketing company that took over my life as well. Art always played the background. It was always there. It was like something where I would get a commission piece every once in a while, but never really took it seriously.
Yeah. So it sounds like at a certain point when you were working as a skateboarder, making a living as a skateboarder, that there might have been some pivotal choices like, okay, you know what, this might be the time to switch gears here. What was the process and what was that like? Like once you got to that point where you're like, hey, there might be some opportunity here. Was it just like a natural, you kind of just followed what you were, was offered to you? Or
it was definitely a natural progression. With something like skateboarding, you can only do it so long,
right.
That hardcore. I was throwing myself down handrails and filming all the time. And it was like everyday thing. So as you get older, you get hurt a lot easier. And I definitely got hurt around, I was like 27 and I had like really bad sciatica and back problems and knee problems. And slowly but surely, I had to like kind of tell my sponsors one by one, like, hey, I can't really do this much anymore. So I think it was with that. And then I was kind of like thinking next moves. I fell into like this street marketing role where I started a company with another guy down in Atlanta. I moved down to Atlanta after high school. And it was something that took off like pretty quickly. We were promoting concerts for Live Nation, AEG Live, all these companies and record labels back then as well. This is like around 2000, 2001. And I don't know, it was something that took over my life right after skateboarding. So with that, like once like I got really, far into like the street marketing career, and it was kind of running itself. And I started, pretty much for like therapeutic reasons, started just drawing and doodling. And I'd say around like 2009 or 10, started like really exploring like, okay, I really want to start painting again. Like I had like these fantasies of, going out, tagging and, painting graffiti in trains. I was like, but I'm too old to do that.
Yeah.
As much as fun as it is, I wanted to progress beyond all that. I still admire it to this day. It's an incredible thing. It kept me out of trouble, but also got me in a lot of trouble. It kept me productive,
Yeah.
back in the day. So next progression is like, well, I saw a lot of these guys that I watched growing up painting graffiti kind of progress onto doing murals and getting paid, doing everything from ads for brands to doing their own thing and just doing beautification projects. And I kind of fell into it, sort of wanting to do beautification projects for communities. And I want to say like around like 2011, I got an opportunity with Metro Schools here in Nashville. I knew the marketing director. I think she was a marketing director. Somebody in the marketing department was like a friend of a friend, and they were like, "Hey, we have a small grant to do multiple murals in all these different schools on the east side." And I was like, "I'd love to." And we would work with the students. It was like a full-on community project. Give some students something to do after school, something productive to do, and also teach a new skill. And I was kind of like, I really wanted to do that kind of work, something that was for the better good. I'd done a ton of graffiti and stuff that really just was, I don't know, for me. So that's kind of where I sort of just naturally fell into it. It was just an opportunity that came up, and right place, right time, I don't know. And that's kind of what started, me thinking about, well, maybe I could actually, try to make a living, but also just do this for good and fun.
I have a couple questions to dive into that just a little bit. One of the things that I believe that artists have a very hard time with is breaking into a community or opportunities. And, there has been a whole bunch of different advice, like Steve Martin said, be so good that they can't ignore you. And then there's a whole bunch of advice saying, get into a scene instead of trying to do this as a lone wolf. What was it like going from I do this for myself to prospecting for jobs? And how did you, so you said you knew there was an opportunity that came up. At that point, after you finished this, I'm sure you were like, okay, what's next? What was the path towards making this like a career for you?
Yeah, I mean, I had spent better part of a decade, running a street marketing company, growing it to the point that I was able to get bought out after about 10 years. And, it was a job that had me running 24/7, 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. basically. So I was like, I kind of was feeling a little burnt out. I was like, okay, what do I want to do? I don't think I want to do this forever. It's been great. It's doing its thing. What else do I want to do? It's like that every 10 years, I feel like, you kind of like, all right, what's next?
Right.
I was at that moment, and I was like, man, this is really fun doing these like beautification projects, doing something productive, something that other people are learning and being productive as well, and creating something. Doing graffiti back in the day, I was creating something, although it was pretty much for myself. Now I have an opportunity to create with others for others. And so I just like sat down one day, built a website, started building a portfolio, all the stuff that we did for the schools. And I kind of use that as my resume. My portfolio, it'll be like, hey, pitch. I was using it to pitch, hey, can I paint on the side of your wall? Whatever. What other schools, what other community centers, the YMCA, whatever. I started just kind of like slowly putting that word out, like, hey, I'm doing this now. And, obviously still having the day job. And it took about 4 or 5 years of sort of pitching it, putting it out there. At the time, Nashville wasn't really ready for street art. And,
sure.
It was a battle, like, begging developers and business owners to like, let me paint your wall for free. I will get the supplies, or hey, I'll do this and clean up this graffiti problem if you pay for the supplies. It was tough. I mean, I got 90% no, because they were like, oh, it's street art, it's graffiti, it's taboo. There was like a stigma.
Too radical for it.
Yeah, that's too progressive. So I mean, it definitely took a while, and I think it was around 2015. I got an opportunity with an old client of mine, which was PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer. one of the girls that worked for them, she was a marketing department, and she saw that I'd done graffiti, and she saw my site somehow. I don't know, found out about my past work and stuff that I was wanting to do currently, and gave me an opportunity to paint a mural at the Basement East. Inside, the wall's now gone, but when the Basement East first opened, it was this big, swirly black and white, I don't know, shapy, I don't know, really organic sort of line work stuff with a huge PBR can.
Hmm.
It was like an 8-layer stenciled PBR can,
Wow.
and people could act like they're drinking it. And that was my first like real paid opportunity.
And when was that?
Like 2015,
Okay.
16. And from that, it rolled into an opportunity with Bonnaroo, doing like 30 installations for like the entire VIP area.
Wow.
And, add that to the portfolio and just kind of, naturally progress with that. That's sort of how it happened. It just sort of happened. And, within a few months, I had to quit my day job, which was kind of nice. That was 4 years ago.
Well, first of all, congrats, because I feel like that's every artist's like goal, is to get to a certain point where what they're doing kind of rolls into what they get to do all the time. So, I mean.
Oh, I'm so thankful every day I get to do what I love doing.
Yeah. So how many different murals do you think that you did before that first paid gig?
I mean, graffiti, I don't even know, probably 100 pieces.
Sure.
Graffiti pieces, thousands of tags, all over the country, everywhere from New York to LA. Yeah, I mean, I scribbled on walls for a long time. But then, there was like a gap where I just wasn't even doing that. A lot of my friends were getting in trouble or, I was in like Two Worlds skateboarding and these two like alternative sort of like styles and, lifestyles and sports. Yeah, I mean, it was good to have that gap because it allowed me to sort of like soak in what I did from the past, kind of figure out what I want to do from then on. Because I had to have art in my life in some way with, creating in somehow. Whether it was through skateboarding, which was very creative, a very individualistic sport. I was creating with my feet and brain for a while, doing that. And then, once that slowed down, that creative sort of like thing was nagging at me. I was like, I have to do something.
Yeah, got to create something. Because even in the world of skateboarding, it's like choreography and athletics.
It's ballet and choreography and luck and stupidity, and I'll love it.
A lot of courage.
I mean, I'll skate until I can't walk. I've been skating for 30 years. And, I built a half pipe in my backyard in the last house I had, I
love that.
As long as I can cruise around. And when I was in Europe this past year, living in Budapest, and, we didn't have cars there. We didn't drive. So it was, I skated everywhere, took the train everywhere, skated everywhere. Yeah, it's a major part of my life.
Yeah.
Just like art.
Yeah, some of the most creative people I know are skateboarders.
Definitely.
And you're not the first person that I've met and that I know within this world who has gone from, skateboarding to another form of creativity.
Yeah. There's so many people I grew up with that, if they didn't go down the bad path, they're now like, creative directors for, toy companies to ad agencies, you name it, like, photographers, videographers, social media directors, concert promoters like me. It's all creative world. And it's like, I guess if you're that kind of person, you have to do something creative, no matter what area or field or expertise it is.
So it sounds like there's been obviously some really, really great moments of success. In the past 4.5 years where you've been doing this full time, do you have any moments where there has just been like a total failure or anything like that where it was like, oh my gosh, this might, the thought crosses your mind like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or how the heck am I going to fix this? How did you rebound and how did you, pick yourself back up and figure out the road moving forward?
Well, I mean, being an artist in any creative field, really, where you're self-employed, you're freelance, especially after I was running a company and I'd worked for a few agencies, it was like a consistent pay, salary gig. You go from that to like, okay, this is all up to me. And just my creative ability of painting pretty pictures on buildings and stuff. It's like, that's kind of crazy. To like, okay. And, a few years into it, I was like, okay, well, I'm making a steady living. This is great. But there have been like many moments where with any self-employed person, anybody that's freelance, whether you're in the film industry or whatever, you're gonna have those moments of like, you get 10 gigs in a row, back to back to back to back. And then it's like this void of 3 months. Or like right now, I've got like probably 22 proposals out there. I've had 2 gigs in 6 months. And they're just all like waiting and on a hold. A few of them dropped out last minute. And, it's just like the struggle of being self-employed. Like, it's feast or famine for sure.
Yeah.
And, the only way I can like deal with it is just like, well, this has been consistent for a long time. There are going to be those voids with any creative field, any kind of freelance work, no matter what you're doing. And you just got to know that. You just got to be diligent and, hit those people up, stay on people. Because, I think when it comes to the arts, it's kind of a side thing for a lot of companies or businesses. Or I have realized that, like, I'm dealing with a lot of developers and architect firms, and, they have pretty crazy schedules. There's a lot of them have salary jobs. A lot of time, I don't think they think about the fact that they're reaching out to this independent, self-employed person that is not getting paid a salary when you're going back and forth with 1,000 emails or mock-ups and things like that.
Yeah.
Until, the job is about to start. So I feel like I've had to educate a lot of businesses and companies, especially in like secondary markets. Chicago, Atlanta, LA, New York, they get it. Usually it's a lot smoother process, but I'd say like here in Nashville, it's definitely been a very, I've had a lot of educational aspect to when I'm pitching work, and yeah, it is kind of scary to like, have a client just bail on you like last minute. I actually, this past year when I was living overseas, I had 3 mural jobs lined up, and 2 different hotels I won't name, and then I did a mural for Patagonia. On my way here, everything was scheduled out, invoiced out. I was waiting on deposits. Patagonia came through like a champ, and I arrived to paint the other ones, and they completely ghosted me. Like, it was like $10,000 worth of work. And it was just like, oh my God, I just went across the world and nothing. Didn't hear from them for weeks, completely blew me off, and then just decided to like not go forward with. They were just not ready. So it's just, there's been a handful of those kind of struggles. Luckily, I try to line up as much as possible, especially when I was overseas and coming back over here. I would try to line up a few gigs at a time, just in case. You never know. I mean,
right.
Even with a contract, people can put things on hold. It's just like an album that's going to be released, and then the record label's like, nah, it's not ready. And you're like waiting on that, album to go live and make money and go on tour. And they're like, nah. So, I mean, just like with anything else.
So like with the prep, I mean, even thinking about it from like an album perspective, so much prep goes into that. Like, merch has been made and products have been bought. And like in your case, I'm sure paint and supplies and, rentals have all like, so in that moment, do you have to ask those companies to help recoup, or is that something where you're just stuck with it and now you have to figure out a way to make money from that?
I mean, I usually don't buy supplies or rent anything or put anything, deposits on my end. I don't come out of pocket. I mean, I have done that in the past, and I burned myself pretty hard. So, I've definitely learned to like, I don't come out of pocket until I get a deposit for sure. Because then it's like, okay, they're serious. They've invested into it. Let's move forward. That's the hard part, is getting that. Getting that initial sort of deposit, even if you've gone back and forth with them. I've had to reel back on the amount of like free mock-ups and, kind of them trying to figure out what they want sort of scenario, because it does take a lot of time to put those things together. It's actual work. And like I said, it's another educational piece.
Yeah.
It's like, you're asking me to do something. I'm going to do an initial thing just to kind of get the ball rolling and some ideas flowing. But beyond that, it's time and energy, and I don't have all the time in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a learning experience for me. It's been trial and error. I didn't go to school for this. I didn't go to school for art. I went to Art Institute of Atlanta for 1 semester and quit because I didn't learn anything. And it was really expensive too. Actually, some of my favorite artists that I grew up with that are now doing incredible, whether some of them became like, major sign painters and huge muralists and showing in galleries all over the world. All of them dropped out of school. I mean, I would definitely get your education, get a degree, no matter what. But
what's the but? Yeah, this is the piece of gold right here.
But I don't know. I mean, I think in my case, I tried to go to school 3 times.
Yeah.
I tried to do like business psychology at Georgia State. I tried to go to Nashville State here. I tried to go to Art Institute, and every single time some crazy opportunity came up where it took over my life in a really positive way, good way. It was a job. I didn't grow up rich or anything. I didn't really have a lot of family growing up. So it was like, it was all on me. And when these opportunities came up, it was like, man, it's a really educational experience. It's an experience in general. I get to learn a lot about something cool that I'm interested in. I'm running with that. And that became my college.
Gotcha. So it was more about the doing right off the bat? Like every time instead of prep, it was, no, I'm just going to take this opportunity and wing it.
I mean, it's,
Like trial by fire.
trial by fire. It's like, you know what? If I'm not learning or I'm not like motivated with college, while being in school, like it's very important. Like, I don't even have a degree. I have like not even an associate's degree. And like I said, I remember my second semester at Georgia State. I was like doing college, doing this. I got an opportunity to start a street marketing company. And the following semester, I had to quit because it just took over, 24/7. So it was like, you know what? I have these amazing opportunities and these experiences that come up every time I try to do like the normal thing or try to do like the right thing, going to college and getting my education. It just wasn't for me, I guess, because every single time I got pulled away. It was something really cool.
Yeah.
And something where I learned a lot. It was a little bit harder. There were learning curves. I didn't have those book smarts to kind of like, fall back on. I don't have a degree to fall back on. But so I was like, well, that's kind of the route I was going, from like the age of 20 on. I was like, well, I guess this is it. This is like how I have to learn about all the things I want to do.
You said that there were some people who would, as you would go to these different cities, within these different communities, there were different people who were doing art, and there were different people doing different styles of art. Would you consider those your mentors, or like, did you have any mentors along this journey leading up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I had many mentors. I mean, people in all different fields. But yeah, growing up doing graffiti, there were like, the older guys that were like, very prevalent in the graffiti world and very well known. This is like pre-internet and pre-social media. And so it was a different, to find these people or discover these people or meet these people, you had to follow graffiti magazines. You had to just be in the right place at the right time or go to these places that you saw in videos that they had painted. And that's kind of how it was like a full-on discovery. And then, when you meet these people, you're like, oh man, like, you've done so much and, how can I learn from you? And some of those guys were really cool and they kind of took me under their wing and, showed me style and like how they developed their style. And, I remember like, I think it was this guy named Revoke. He's out of LA, but he lived here for a while. He's one of the most well-known street artists in the world. He gave me an alphabet, a lettering alphabet of his style. And he's like, practice this. And that was just like one moment I'll never forget. And that's how I developed my style. And there's been many mentors, with skateboarding. There were people that I looked up to and had the opportunity to skate with that I looked up to in skate videos growing up in magazines. And, being, a fully sponsored skateboarder and traveling, I got to meet a lot of these people along the way, just by chance mainly. Or, the company I was skating for, they happened to skate for the same company. And I got to like go skate with them and film with them and learn from them. And it was inspiring just to see these people doing incredible work, whether it was art or skateboarding. And I mean, it pushed me even further. Every time I would skate or, do some kind of art related thing with somebody that was, far more experienced than I was, or just had a style I really, really loved, that was every single time pushed me even further and further. And made me want to try harder and, made me want to like really make a living at this stuff, at some point.
In those moments where you did have an encounter with somebody who was very experienced or someone who you looked up to, did you find yourself taking on more of an observer role, or did you find yourself like asking questions? Like, how did you approach these people in these situations?
Yeah, I mean, like the observer role is something I've always done. Even like when I was, I promoted concerts for about a decade. I was always really into like creating this moment for people to enjoy, and then sitting back and observing how everybody interacted with it. I think it was the same thing with skateboarding. I was pretty quiet. I was always nervous to approach, big pro skateboarders and stuff like that. I kind of just would let skateboarding do the talking for me, or my art. I would definitely would ask questions and be like, hey, nice to meet you, let's hang out. But it was, I mean, there was moments where I just was bold and was like, how do you do this, to whatever pro skateboarder or amazing artist. And, there was a few opportunities that I had where they were like, hey, come to my studio tomorrow. I'll show you this process of how to do this kind of screen printing, or, this is how I make these kinds of pieces or whatever. Same with skateboarding. Hey, come to my training facility. Like I had an opportunity with, there's a skateboarder named Rob Deerdick, Robin Big. And I was getting like flow sponsorship from a company called Alien Workshop for a while. And so I would go up to Dayton, Ohio, and where their warehouse is. And, I get to walk around the warehouse and get some free gear and stuff. And then from there, I was staying up there for a while, and I got an opportunity through one of my sponsors to fly out to this trade show in San Diego. Rob Dyrdek lived there at the time. A buddy of mine was working with them and had me come over to his training facility to skate with them, and just like it was just me and him, which was made me nervous as hell. I was like eating shit all over the place, like just flailing, and and he was like, "Man, chill, like it's just you and me, man. I don't care. Like we're here to skate and have a good time." And at that moment, it just clicked for me, and I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm not trying to like, show you up or like show you how great of a skateboarder I am. It was just like we're just having a good skate session and hanging out, and
Yeah.
and I was good after that point. And it's like, with skateboarding, it's like a mindset. You have to like really trick your mind into just like focusing and not being nervous, because you could get really hurt if you think about what you're trying to do too much.
One thing that I have noticed in hearing you talk about your career so far is there's just been an incredible amount of work ethic, talking about your 9 to 3, 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. type of work. So I wanted to ask, like in the process of this career in particular, have there been any practices or habits that you have like nailed down? This is something that I have to do every single day in order to get to where I want. Like, are you a hardcore habit guy, or is it just kind of like a flow of the day?
I mean, it's kind of a flow of the day. Every day is different. Every project is different. I try to like, I've been better about trying to just draw something every day. I've been horrible about sketching out stuff just for fun or painting just for fun. Up until recently, I've been too busy, to just have a moment to just sketch and, do whatever and just kind of vibe out and experiment. As winter comes, outdoor art's kind of like painting outdoors gets a little bit, it slows down a bit. So usually I try to take that opportunity to work on studio stuff and experiment and just sort of, I'm trying to develop some habits of just like every day I'm going to make a painting or a drawing or something. Usually I'll just go outside and skate around for a minute. That's sort of like a habit. If I like have like a little wrench in whatever I'm trying to create, or just I don't feel like doing art stuff, which, I kind of was like overwhelmed for a bit. Like I was so busy that I didn't have a chance to like experiment and stuff like that. So when I was in Europe, I started skating like every day. I'd wake up, take the dogs out, come back, and then just like go around the town, go around the city and just skate everywhere. And I'd come back fully inspired and sort of like it was a nice like reset. I'd say skateboarding's always been there for me. It's always been like a release, it's been a very productive activity that it's like a therapeutic break.
Yeah.
So I'd say like that's kind of a habitual thing. Like if I feel like I'm stuck, I'll just go skate. Some things I want to do, which I haven't done. I don't think I have like anything I do every single day. It's like I wake up, read the news,
Sure.
do this doodle. It's just sort of a flow of the day. I mean, every day is different for me, especially working for yourself. It's like you're not going into an office. You're not clocking in at the same time. I try to be better about waking up around the same time every day. The earlier, the better. The later I sleep, the less I do during the day. I've pulled in yoga into my world just from all my skateboarding ailments. That's helped a lot. Just those little brain breaks where you focus on something else besides what you do for a living.
Yeah.
I think I want to have more of a habit of doing those things because it seems to help everything else.
Hey, good people. This is the part of the show where I salute the amazing music featured on this podcast. You can license the feature song on today's episode, Christopher Walken by Falls, by simply heading to soundstripe.com/keepcreating. There you'll find a custom playlist of all the songs we use on this show. Once again, that's soundstripe.com/keepcreating. Also, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast so we can continue our pursuit to providing as much value as we can for creatives just like you. All right, let's hear more from Nathan. Where do you draw your inspiration? Are there books, or is it like a philosophical thing, or is it different artists, different types of art? Like, what like primes that creative vessel for you so that when you do bring in a project, or you do get a project and a project comes in, you're ready to go? And like even in your experimental work, like are there any influences or people or situations or cultures that you're being influenced by that is showing up in your work?
Yeah, I mean, like, back in the day when I was skateboarding a lot and doing graffiti, it was all about like the environment, the people I would meet, the different cities, the different styles, the things I would see on the walls and the way that people skated. All of those things kind of inspired definitely a lot to do with nature. I've always loved like landscape sort of elements. And I've been trying to pull that into my work now. Like, up until this point, I've just been doing crazy geometric shapes and colors, very rigid, very measured out things, very mathematical type stuff. And that stuff's great, but like I really have always, but I've also had like this very flowy organic style as well that kind of comes from my graffiti background. And like I did a piece at the 505 Tower downtown. It's like one of the tallest buildings here. And they let me do one of my like organic like line work pieces. And especially in a place like that, I was like, really? But it turned out really cool. And it was a nice break from all the rigid geometric, measured out mathematical sort of stuff. But I do take from all the colors in nature, architecture for sure. I'm a big architecture nerd, and I have a lot of books on architecture. I was going to be an architect at one point and then realized I was going to go to school for 8 years and didn't want to do that.
That's my story too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, the organic flow of skateboarding, and then just like my sort of mathematical brain I love how gradients work. I love structured things, but I also love like this crazy free flow, which is probably from skateboarding, I'd say. And, nature, the way like the patterns in nature and things like that. I take a lot of inspiration from that. So it's been a mix of everything, like my graffiti background, growing up in a, pretty crazy environment in LA, and then coming here and having a major culture shock and really like wanting and needing those elements I had growing up in LA. Those really inspired me to do graffiti. And then so graffiti has inspired me to do what I do today. It's been a really cool progression. But yeah, I mean, it's everything. People style. I'm influenced by so many different artists. It's ridiculous. I mean, my entire like Instagram feed is all artists or, nature things and, save the ocean, save the reef,
Oh yeah.
Environmental stuff, Nat Geo, and then a ton of artists. And what's cool is like when I went overseas, there's a lot of these street art festivals. And I swear there was like one every week while I was there. Every weekend there was another one during the summer. And it was like this one I went and painted in Kosovo, in Pristina, Kosovo, in Serbia, province of Serbia. And it was called Meeting of Styles. And the city funded 100 artists from all over the world to come and take over this entire section of the city, this old train yard that's like pretty much right downtown Pristina. And it was like a major beautification project, just, artists that I've looked up to for a long time, artists that I've been wanting to collaborate with. And all of a sudden we're all there and we're like, this is amazing. This city, like, had the foresight to see how important, this will be, for years to come. And just for the cultural aspect, just for beautification reasons, we took an area that was completely blighted and like, left for dead basically, and nobody walked around, nobody cared about, to now it's like this major like walking gallery and huge, from artists from like, everywhere from Toronto to like, Poland or wherever. And that's like something I really kind of want to do more here. I want to see more of that in the States. But it was something that inspired the hell out of me and wanted me to be like, okay, I want to get more involved with those kind of things, because those do like, that's like a major version of the small pieces that I do, with the community. But imagine like having a street art festival with artists from all over the world coming to a city. And they do that here. There's quite a few in the States now, and it's growing. But, the impact that does to local artists that are looking to, they're coming up in the mural kind of world and, wanting to progress, getting to either see or work with an international artist that you've looked up to through their socials or whatever. And then now they're in your city. It's like, if you're an aspiring singer or dancer or whatever, and you have like this artist that comes through and plays, Bridgestone, and you're just like, oh my God, I saw them in person and I'm inspired now to like, even try harder. It's the same thing. And culturally, it does wonders for a city. And for a place like Pristina, Kosovo, I never thought I'd ever go to Kosovo or that deep of Eastern Europe and Serbia. But the fact that city saw that foresight to bring all these artists together, it was an incredible time. It was like total camaraderie. We were all working together to create this one gigantic piece. Even though we were doing individual pieces, we all sort of like collaborated together. And I got to meet so many people I never thought I would, work with people I never thought I would. Now I've got friends all over the world. And I think that was really important. I mean, growing up, watching all these graffiti artists back in the day and like trying to meet them, it's a little bit easier to meet people now with social media and stuff. And there are like outlets now for this kind of work. So to see both of those, that whole world of graffiti in the 90s and, is totally illegal, to now it's like a very, sought after thing. And there's like these big exhibitions with street artists and graffiti artists and just all coming together to do something good for a community.
Yeah.
I really want to I think that's the direction I really want to go. And I want to see more of that. I mean, it's helped me. I mean, I got My first opportunity to work with international artists was actually a big piece in the Gulch. A guy named Jason Woodside from New York. It's right across from the Wings mural, which I'm sure everybody knows where that is. It was actually right after the Wings mural got painted. Got an opportunity to paint. I think it was like a 200-foot piece by maybe 30 feet tall. And Jason Woodside does kind of similar work that I do. And somehow we got together and I painted that with him. And it was really cool because I had seen his work for a few years prior. I was like, oh man, this guy's really doing it. He's painting all over the world. He's got this like specific style. I was still trying to figure out my style. And it was really cool to work with an artist of that caliber because it showed me more that, oh, I can do this. Like he was into my work. I taught him some things, he taught me some things, and it was just like this awesome collaboration of styles. And, it was very educational for me. And it made me feel better about what I was doing and that I was on the right path. And yeah, I mean, I hope that kind of opportunity happens for anybody else that's in my position or was in my position coming up. I'll be learning until I'm like, decrepit old. Like art is something that you'll never like stop learning. Like if you stop learning art, then you're not living. You're done. So it's going to be a forever progression. But as long as you're working on that, and yeah, I mean, those moments where you get to meet an artist that's far more experienced than you are, or just has an incredible ability. I've met some artists that are just now kind of like starting to paint publicly, and they've been these incredible like fine art painters, on canvas, and now they're like scaling that large scale, and it's ridiculous. Like I said, man, most of the people I follow on social media are all artists. And that's the most inspiring thing to me, I think.
So I feel like that right there is an important piece of advice for anybody coming up. Like, I mean, obviously there's a part of it that's habit, and there are not habit, but practice and craft, and you need to you need to work on it.
Practice.
Go out and get inspired. Go out and try to meet these people and try to learn from these people, and think of it as a continuous growth process rather than I'm not ready, or I'm not anything like that. My question for you now is, for somebody coming through the ranks of, any type of creative field, what is a piece of advice you would give them? And what do you think is hard? What's the hardest part about it right now?
I mean, I've had a lot of people come up to me or, reach out to me. I mean, it's been, especially this year, I've had more than ever. I mean, because it is, mural work has grown into a thing that, developers and business owners are like, oh, we need to get rid of this ugly khaki wall. It's becoming a little bit more of a thing, which is great. And through that, I've had a lot of people, now that I've done a lot of work, I've got a portfolio, a lot of cool names, attached to it. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, asking that same thing, like, how do I get into this? And, usually, I just talked to somebody a couple days ago. This girl reached out to me and was like, I want to start doing murals. How do I get into it? And I was like, well, what have you done? Have you painted a wall outside? Have you, let me see your portfolio. I want to say like the most important thing that has helped me get to where I'm at and the work that I've been able to get is putting my portfolio together, keeping up with that, documenting everything you do. You're not going to get paid the first mural you do or the first 10 maybe. You got to get out there and just do your due diligence work and start, from nothing, not get paid. Just, you got to make those opportunities happen as far as like approach a business owner, or just go practice on a random wall that you have access to. When I was like in high school, because I got in trouble for doing graffiti a few times, I built a wall in my mom's courtyard that was 8 feet tall, about 8 feet wide. And I would paint on it, take a photo, cover it, paint on it. And I have probably like 30 or 40 layers. It was to the point where the Tennessean came through and interviewed me because they were just like kind of blown away that I would paint over my own artwork and just take a photo of it. And I mean, I was on the front of the Tennessean for that. Like, it was like 98. I don't even know. But that's how I practice. I practiced, in solitude to get my skills up. And that was one thing, like back in the day with graffiti, like, you don't go out on the streets until you've like practiced your ass off and, practice your hand style, go through tons of notebooks of stuff until you feel confident enough to like, okay, I'm going to try and apply this. And practice makes perfect, maybe never perfect, but practice makes better. And, I would definitely say practice a ton, develop your style, dive into the world of arts, take an art class, whatever, do that. If you feel like, hey, I've got something here, try and get those opportunities. You will work for free for a while, especially doing, it takes a minute to learn how to scale your art from a notebook to a gigantic wall. Start small.
One more question, and then I have two like fun questions.
Cool.
All right, so one more serious question here. And it was kind of the second part to my question is, what do you think is like the hardest part about being a creative today, or like what's the biggest challenge that creatives and artists face today?
I mean, I'd say just being the age I am and kind of coming up in an older school way of doing art and, coming up through graffiti world, pre-internet, pre-social media. I didn't have the tools back then. It was like raw materials, no Insta famous anything. There was like, you just did it to do it. I think there are a lot more tools these days to kind of boost past a lot of that initial sort of like, there's a lot of computer programs, which I use every day to design my murals for the most part. I'll sketch something out, throw it in Illustrator, and then I've got like this really awesome, colorful piece that would have taken forever to draw with markers and paint pens and, by brush or whatever. So I think it's really cool. Kind of like with like DJing and music production. But there's like all these incredible tools that sort of like allow you to skip past a lot of, the BS that, you had to deal with back in the day, which is great. I mean, I feel like people can learn a lot more faster. There's all these really cool tools, whether it be digital, whatever, that kind of inspire creativity. I think that's amazing. Like I'm using those tools now. I was also the person that didn't have those tools. So I think being able to see that is really cool for me. But, kids just starting in this world and like immediately being able to access like all these awesome, like, digital tools and stuff like that. I've seen art go from traditional mural work or graffiti to like straight up like 8-bit graphics on the sides of buildings, like really cool gradient things that you can only be like computer generated. But then once you're able to do that, you take that exact thing and paint it on a wall. I don't know. I'm inspired by all that kind of stuff. I'm inspired by technology, of course, but I don't even know if I'm answering your question correctly. But as far as like a struggle that I had like with that, or like,
well, what do you think? What do you think the struggle is today? Like for
yeah.
young creatives, and
Sorry,
I actually see this kind of being a struggle, and I think you started off this way, where you had to go through all of those steps of learning old school, where you had to learn almost the craft and how things were done, and now there might be a couple crutches that people can lean on.
Totally. So I think I want to say that the only thing that I can really think of is an oversaturation of everything. Everything's so easily accessible that there's almost too many options, too many possible opportunities. There's, Insta artists. There's people that, can rise to fame really quickly. It makes it it's a lot more cluttered to kind of like cut through.
Sure.
Than maybe, 10 years ago. I think that might be one thing. I noticed that like, I left Nashville for a year, went overseas, and I was like engulfed in like the entire world of the arts. And I felt I was in a super saturated area as opposed to being in the States, going to where like the entire world of art history is from. And people like, with their educational system over in Europe, like they're brought up to like learn fine arts in and out, and people make full art, living off artists, it's a different world. So I was like, man, this is intense. I feel super whack, like being here. I've got a lot to learn, which was good. So I think people might have to, in a way, try harder to get noticed, but there's also so many more tools to get noticed and help with creativity. That's like the only kind of like hardship or struggle I can see nowadays. I mean, I just say there's an oversaturation of a lot of things, and especially in creative worlds. I don't know. I mean, that's all I can kind of think of, really. I don't know.
That's a fair answer.
I mean, without all the like old school efforts of like trying hard and you got to be unique, more unique than maybe a while back. There's those things that it's a constant learning curve.
Yeah.
You got to roll with technology. You got to roll with like styles and formats and all that kind of stuff. And you just have to be progressive,
That's good advice, though. I mean, you can't settle. You can't settle and learn one thing and then expect that
nothing's going to come that easy.
Right.
And I have noticed a lot of people that have reached out to me, they just didn't seem like they were willing to try hard. And they just wanted to do it. They wanted to like instantly, I'm a mural artist, and yeah, just like with anybody who's trying to be an aspiring singer or songwriter, like people just want it. Instant gratification, I think, has been a struggle for me to like deal with. I don't really need instant gratification, but I've seen a lot of kids and a lot of people coming to me wanting that instant gratification more so in the past like few years.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, I mean, that's definitely like a struggle, I guess, for them. Like, I want this thing, but I want it now. Yeah, I don't know, man. Hard work, practice.
That's great advice.
Be your unique self. Don't try to be anybody else, but be inspired by other people.
Love it.
Oh,
no, that was good, dude. You're sitting here trying to like cover your tracks. Honestly,
No.
that you answered the question phenomenally. Both of those things are things that have been pretty standard and reoccurring in this podcast.
Okay,
is
cool.
Oversaturation and instant gratification, and I love that. I want to pound it home.
Yeah.
Because I think that those, I mean, I've fallen into that at times, as a creative, as an artist, everything. And I know that I'm not the only one. And it's just something that in this current culture that we're in is something that we see every day. So I think it's important.
True.
I think it's important for people to hear that there is a way to do what you want, but it might not be exactly how you think. So
yeah, it might take longer than you think. Might be a lot harder than you think. You might think it might be too hard and not worth it, but then you're not really into it.
Right.
If you're really passionate about something and you really want to do something, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, throughout the years, I've had to figure out how to make a living off all these different things that I enjoyed doing as a hobby because it was expensive. Skateboarding is expensive. Breaking boards every week is expensive. I didn't have anybody that could really buy those things for the most part. Spray painting is expensive unless you're stealing spray paint like they used to do back in the day. That was a thing. Art is expensive. And to really be able to do these things, you got to figure out how to sort of make a living or just have a really good job and have a lot of free time. Either way, you're going to have to work hard in some way or another to do this, full-time, part-time, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I got two fun questions.
Nice.
Okay. This first one is, if you had to pick a character from a children's novel or not a novel, even a movie or anything, cartoon series, just like a children's character or even a parable or a fable that you resonated with or you thought was like, oh, this is me.
Oh,
who would it be?
That's a tough one. I mean, I love the gummy bears watching, growing up. I love the Care Bears growing up. I don't think I really idolized anybody in that way.
Sure.
Or wow, this cartoon hero or this hero on TV is.
Fictional character?
Yeah, dude. Honestly, I can't think of one.
Wow.
I think.
It's the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a good amount of TV, but I was always outside doing stuff, doing physical activity.
Yeah.
I think I was just in my own head creating my own.
Who did you idolize in skateboarding growing up?
Oh, God, man. Mark Gonzalez, the entire Plan B team, Mike Carroll, Rick Howard, Jamie Thomas, which I've been able to skate with all these guys too.
That's awesome.
Tony Hawk I got to skate with a few times. I actually beat him in a game of Skate when I was 14. Right? Those are real, I think I was just more into actual things and actual people doing things. That's who I looked up to.
Right.
I don't remember a time where I was like, man, this fictional character or this cartoon or this, even in a book or a novel, I was a 50% reader. I read books growing up, but I was more interested in being outside and, playing or skating or doing art, doing stuff outside, that's what I was inspired by.
A little bit more tangible. Yeah,
I guess so, yeah. Honestly, I can't think of one sort of TV.
You know what? I kind of like that answer too. That means it.
Now I'm going to think about that all day.
No, I love it. You don't have to live in the fictional in order, but so many people are inspired by stories and different worlds and stuff like that. And I think sometimes even as artists and creatives, we feel like we have to be a part of that and really influence and creativity. And you can be inspired by anything. The world that you're in, look into it a little bit deeper and see how how it is basically just this really incredible, nobody could think about creating our actual world,
Yeah.
Our imaginations probably aren't sophisticated enough to actually do that.
No.
So, draw from that.
I was really inspired by people's stories growing up. I've got a lot of stories. I have a lot of stories myself. And a lot of people tell me that, man, you have a lot of stories. I think that is because I grew up around a lot of people that had a lot of cool stories. And I want to say that inspired me. That was things people I looked up to.
You wanted to have your own.
Dude, you did so much cool stuff growing up. How, that's that's my fictional character. That's my hero, Superman or whatever, growing up. That's what that is.
All right. There you go. Now you don't have to think about it.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
All right, last question.
Yes.
And this is just a fun one that I like to ask everybody. This one you'll probably have to think about for a second too.
Okay.
What's one skill and one thing that you wish you were really proficient at and why?
Oh, man. All right. So I know what I'm good at. What am I not good at? A lot of things. I mean, I'm a good listener. I'm compassionate. I'm good at organizing people to do stuff.
Mhm.
I'm self-disciplined. Actually, you know what? More self-discipline. You can always have that. I work on that every day, especially like when you're an independent artist or a self-employed person. You have to have a lot of self-discipline. Sometimes I'm horrible at that.
What kind? Like where do you struggle?
I mean,
And-
my mind wander. I can do like 10 things at once. I have horrible ADD. Like I could be doing 10 things at once, but I have to be doing all of them at full capacity, kind of.
Mm.
If I'm not, I'm all over the place and can't reel it in. And I'll be like sitting there drawing, and all of a sudden, like, oh, squirrel, and like it's hard for me to just sit down and focus a lot of the time. Just like zone out, focus, do this. I have noticed that compared to like sitting down and drawing and working on like a painting, doing a big, huge, large scale piece outdoors, I have so much more focus on because I feel like not like I have to live up to something but this is gonna be a very public facing thing.
Mhm.
I have to do a really good job, at
Yeah.
least in my eyes, I kind of don't really care what a lot of people think about my work. I hope that people love it, enjoy it, and, mainly for the client, but doing public facing art I realize that I'm super focused, like laser focused, and I will do that for 16 hours on that wall, even if it starts raining or if it's so sunny I'm getting sunburned with 50 SPF on. I don't know. I've noticed that. So I think I need more self-discipline not doing that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Self-discipline is a good one.
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody can, in their own way. I mean, we all know where we're failing. So,
Yeah.
well, before we wrap this up,
Yes.
do you want to tell everybody what you're working on now and what's coming up and where they can find you online and check out some of your work?
Yeah, well, I just finished up a few mural projects, a couple big ones. One was out in Moab for a hotel, and then it ended up being multiple ones out there, which is amazing. That was last week. The week before that, I did a big piece out in Tullahoma, right in downtown Tullahoma. Can't miss it. It's a huge, crazy landscapey gradient piece that I had a lot of fun doing because the owner of the building and also the sponsor, that was Jack Daniels. They didn't give me any booze, but they sponsored the piece. They paid for it, which was really cool. They let me do whatever I wanted. And so I just finished up 2 big projects. I have quite a few in the works. There's a few hotel projects coming up. There's one where I might be painting the inside of an entire pool.
Ooh.
I can't name. There's some really cool, different, architectural projects.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get more into not just a traditional, public facing wall,
Sure.
but like work with architects and work with developers from the get-go. So there's some stuff like that coming up.
Cool.
And you can find all that. My Instagram is super basic. It's just my name, Nathan Brown 77. My website is www.19ss like 19samsam.net. Don't go to .com. I have no idea what that is.
All right.
19ss.net, and it has all my entire portfolio up there.
Sounds great. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming.
Thank
This
you.
has been great.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I
too.
hope that we can do it again in the future.
Yes, sir.
All right. I want to thank Nathan again for being on the show, and I hope he's encouraged you to dive into the opportunities and passions you come across, to accept the challenges that they present, and to continue to practice and grow in your creative pursuits. Make sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss future episodes, and help us to build a healthy and collaborative community of creators by sharing this with someone who could use some words of inspiration today. And lastly, I want to thank our team here at Soundstripe for making the show possible. If you don't know who we are, Soundstripe is a subscription-based music licensing company that provides unlimited music to subscribers for all video and creative needs. If you need music for your podcast, YouTube channel, vlog, radio show, film, anything, go to soundstripe.com to learn more about our amazing library of music and sound effects. We also create and curate a ton of inspirational and educational material that's featured on our blog. With everything we do, our mission is to keep creatives creating. So once again, thank you all for joining us this week. Hope you tune in with us next time. And remember, no matter what, keep creating.